Hi, and welcome to Intentional Pathways by Design, where we are always talking about relationships, both business and personal. And today we are going to talk personal. We are going to talk personal, and we are talking with our fantastic guests, Donald Rucker, Pastor Donald Rucker, and his beautiful wife, Ethel Rucker, with the Christian Developmental Center.
Yeah.
How are you both doing today?
Doing fantastic.
Doing very well.
Thank you so much for asking.
And thank you for having us on your show.
Yeah, we're doing good.
We're doing well.
Absolutely. Just amazing. And so excited that we are going to dive in and talk about communication. And before we dive in, we're going to talk about a quote, but something that we were kind of chatting about before we hopped on today was all about communication, right?
Exactly.
And the many different layers that there are, and that we're constantly peeling back those layers. But let's dive into our quote today, and that is: the lack of communication can drive a spike between two people wider than any physical distance. Mark W. Boyer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think about this quote?
Well, I would personally just add to the quote. It is a powerful quote.
Mm-hmm.
I would just add to the lack of effective communication. Because I found that people communicate all the time. For example, with nonverbals, sometimes we miss those nonverbals, but that's how many people communicate. So there's a lack of effective communication that I believe would drive that wedge. Yeah.
So powerful. And Ethel, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree. You have to learn to be effective with your communication, because we are communicating, but how effectively are we communicating?
Yes.
See, we communicate all the time, like you said, in negative ways,
Right.
But we have to learn how to effectively communicate with one another, our husband, our children, our bosses, employees. So effective communication, and it's a skill, has to be learned, taught.
Yes.
And isn't that the truth? It's a skill. It's something that we absolutely, would you both agree, something that we take it for granted?
Oh, yes. No doubt. We do. And I think that's the demise many times in the relationship, is that we take so many things for granted, that people really understand what we're trying to convey to them. And at least that's what we've experienced, with 39 years of marriage, 23 years of pastoring, is that, you have to work overtime to make sure that the concepts, the ideas, the thoughts that you're trying to convey, that everyone is on the same page with you. And many times, even as a pastor, you make the assumption that everybody understands this already. So
I love that you said that, because we talk about, even in our workshops and things, when you marry someone, they may be at elementary level with their understanding, their comprehension, their perceptions, their life interactions and things. You may be at a college level. And that's what I'm talking about. Then you miss a lot of things. Because if you're communicating from a professor level and your spouse only has an elementary understanding, there is explosion, because the communication breakdown is definitely going to occur.
It's going to occur.
I love that, Ethel. I love what you just said. And for those of you that are listening, I know you have your notepads out, because there is going to be so many different tips, tricks, and strategies that are going to be shared today. But one was just shared just a second ago. It's really understanding where we're at with the person that we're communicating with. Such a dance.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
You can say that again.
Yes.
And an awkward dance at that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It absolutely can be awkward. Oh my goodness. So let's dive in. Can you define for us, and I know, again, it's peeling back the layers, but can you define for us, what healthy communication looks like in marriage. What should it look like?
Well, I would say this, to have effective communication, healthy communication, I believe the couples need to establish rules and guidelines and policy for how they're going to interact in the marriage, how we're going to govern this relationship, what it looks like, how we're going to deal when we disagree, what are some of the rules so that we can continue to harmonize and continue to be progressive in the relationship and not allow a disagreement, a lack of understanding to stop it. So establishing rules, we have found to be very effective. And with those rules come with the mutual respect for one another and the mutual honesty that is needed. Because most time people enter in marriage, and they say that they love each other, but what we found out, love is not enough. Because if it was, we would not have divorce, 50%, in the world, and almost the same in the church. But establishing rules, guidelines for how we're going to govern this powerful union that we have. That would be my take. I don't know what would be your take. So,
what are your thoughts, Ethel?
Well, we talked about earlier when we were talking about the effective communication and having healthy communication was also not making assumptions and things like that. Having, like you said, establishing rules that's going to govern the communication so that we can be able to get on the same page. We talk about always, we share being hard on the problem and not on the person, get an understanding and not to be right. So those are some of the things that we do. And then within, when we're teaching our workshops, we talk about a boxer's analogy. And when you're going into a fight, the boxers, they touch gloves. Why do they do that? Because they're showing mutual respect. And so to have healthy communication within a relationship, you do have to start with mutual respect, reverent respect towards God.
Yes, that would help a lot. If both parties, had a reverence, respect for the person of God, then that would govern you how you interact with your mate.
So I love that. I love that. And when the both of you were sharing, what is coming to me is, I love what you said, Ethel, when you said attack the problem, not the person, because we're teammates.
Right.
Yes.
We're not adversaries.
Right.
Oh my gosh. It feels like it, right? Sometimes it can feel like that in communication, right? Really heavy.
Yeah, but that's the part of the rules. When two people come together, we always use this analogy that marriage is really a business. You're bringing two successful, productive, strong, intelligent people together. There must be a merger that takes place. Just like when a company takes over another company, they sit down and they hash out the rules, the policies, the guideline on how they are now going to work as one. And that's what we see a lot of times in communication. That's part of it. Okay, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with our children? How are we going to raise them? What are some of the values that we want to pass on? What are some of the tradition? And that requires now you really hashing those things out and getting on the same page. Yeah.
Now, I really want to highlight this, and I know we did not talk about it, but can you share a little bit about where the both of you, how you came together?
Sure.
Okay.
Why don't you start?
Well,
because I got the right answer, so you go.
Well, how we came together was I was dating for a while. I dated different people. And then I took myself off the dating market because I realized if I really believed God and his word, that he said that, that you're already, if you want a husband, Ethel, you have to act as though you're already married. And so I said, okay, because you can't, if your husband was here in the physical, he wouldn't allow you to be going around dating all these guys. And so I just stopped dating, started getting involved with my church and all that. And then I got in faith, I prayed and I asked God for a husband. And then I waited 2 years And then he walked through the door of the church. And when
Yes.
he walked through the door, I heard the Lord say, this is not spooky or weird because he does talk. And he said, that's your husband.
Yes.
And he based it on Isaiah 62, where he says, because you've delighted in me, your land shall be married.
Yeah.
And then he confirmed it through my spiritual leadership and authority. And then I went on a fast and had a dream. It was a lot, showing my ring finger. So I knew he was the one that God had sent for me. And he also spoke to him. We always want to
Yes.
make sure
Yes.
it just wasn't one-sided, ladies. So don't just go out there and say the Lord told
Gentlemen.
me, your gentleman, that's your husband.
You go get him, girl.
Exactly. He confirmed it to him. He spoke to him as well. So that's my
Exactly.
side of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
And pretty much that's true. You know,
Mhm.
God does speak. Still today, he
Mhm.
talks. And so, you know, I heard him say that she would be my wife. And we moved in obedience, more so than in knowledge. We were just trying to obey the voice of the Lord when we got married.
Mhm.
We didn't know nothing about each other. We surely didn't know nothing about each other's family. And we joke today, you know, because we have a healthy relationship and we can talk about these things without getting upset, that if she had known my family, if I'd have known her family, we probably would have had a Jonah experience with God.
I love it.
But we was just really trying to
Obey.
obey God. And through that process,
Mhm.
God gave us information and insight from his word on how to govern. Because we just don't believe that you should be tolerating relationships. Relationships should be celebrated. But how do you get to that point where you're celebrating each other? That comes through effective communication,
Mhm.
where you as the couple are establishing rules and guidelines, how we're going to govern this entity.
And last time we spoke about the active listening, learn how to listen actively.
Mhm.
And that was a part of
That
getting to that
process.
healthy communication,
Yeah.
being an active listener.
Because it's not one-sided. There should never be a dominant one personality ruling the relationship. It should be mutual agreement, mutual respect,
Mhm.
mutual submission one to another.
I love that. I love that. So now that we have an idea of what healthy communication really looks like,
Mhm.
there's many of us that may be in situations where we're like, hey, wait a second. And maybe there's some doubt or there's something coming up saying, I think there might be some red flags. So what are 3 red flags in terms of helping us identify a communication breakdown?
Okay. You want
You
to start?
started go ahead.
Well, definitely it would be distance.
And anchor.
You know, the lack of engaging with one another, the distance, the silence, you know, especially around a particular subject matter. And then outbursts of anger, you know, will be another red flag, especially when you're trying to address a situation that needs to be resolved.
And the lack of, like you said, distance, not touching, wanting to be in the same room, things like that.
And then I think assumption is the evil of all communication. That is communication breakdown. Thank you. We assume too much about one another instead of really finding out, really, how do you feel about this? You know, and that requires you asking questions and not just assuming that, you know, your spouse is going along with this. And I just add, we have found that to be true in our profession, you know, of providing spiritual advice to couples. We find that a lot of couples assume for one another that, you know, they talk and they just thought they came into agreement with, really they did not. One of the spouse just went along.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so there's an assumption made that we have an agreement. And so I just think assumption is it's a really evil breakdown in communication. So
let's talk about that for a moment, because assumption comes up, right? It's real. It's real. Or maybe one of the people in the relationship and in the partnership don't really feel comfortable, right? And so they may acquiesce, right? And they may pull back, right? So how do we, now we know what those red flags are. We know what healthy communication is. How do we know that we're in that space where one of the people in the relationship is acquiescing and they're really not really being true?
Yeah.
How do we identify that?
Yes. How can we identify? How can we help peel back the layers of the onion so we really know that we're in a space where both of us are being present?
I believe that we talked a little bit about it, of seeking to get an understanding and not to be right, will help to create and cultivate an environment for you to be able to be open and honest. If the person feels like they're being heard, listened to, understood. Those are some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. I would agree with your thoughts on that. I think many times, people come into a state where they think they're in agreement. And if I can just use this, I really like that women, especially in the cases like this, they are better at communicating their disagreement than men are. Even though men may assume that they have an agreement because we talked about this.
Okay.
But did we get agreement about this?
Right.
And many times, women would go along just to maintain peace. And I think that what you said, we have to cultivate that environment of safety where we can both
feel,
share what we feel without being attacked. But we're looking to get to this place of agreement and being, for the relationship.
And understood. Yeah. Because you have to, and then again, we talked about the temperaments. We also talk about fighting styles and different things like that, and really learning who your mate is. And you talked about presentation, timing is critical. All those things come into factor when you're trying to get to know how to resolve something within a person that maybe acquiesce, is that the word you said?
Yes.
Or pull back and not feel comfortable. Is really, really, you always say this when we talk to our couples, you got to study
your mate.
You got to study your mate.
You really
wow, I love that, Pastor Donald. Oh my goodness, study your mate. So you've got homework to do. I've got to do some homework.
I've been in it for 39 years. I'm still learning.
I love that.
Yeah.
We have to study it. And how much more delicious does that sound? If we have to study our mates? What kinds of things can we do today to study our mate? I love that.
How you study me.
Well,
oh
boy. One of the things I've learned over the years, I watch her mood.
Ooh.
Her mood is a good indicator for me that something is going on that she needs to talk about and not ready to talk about it yet. Or maybe, I'm not ready to hear it. Her mood. My wife is very communicative. She's very conversational. I mean, she wakes up talking. So when I notice that there's no talking going on, that's a check for me that, hey, wait a minute, I need to explore this. Okay, is there something going on? Better yet, for the men out there, I always say, okay, what did I do now?
I love that though, Pastor Donald, how in tune you are. How in tune you are with your mate and how we can learn from that.
Right.
Because if we're not having that connection, then we need to really look at the barometer of our relationship, right? If we're just kind of overlooking something like that. I love that. So now we know what that communication breakdown might look like. What are some ways that couples can repair the communication breakdown?
I believe they need to learn how to establish like a truce. And like with us, I know we have decided that when we have something we don't agree on, we will table it so that we can continue to move forward the peace and the unity and the harmony, and not let that problem or that thing take over. So we will table it and then come back to that situation. That's one way we repair the harmony, the unity, because this business still has to move forward.
Yeah.
So that's one of our rules that we do. We can't agree on it. We give it time. We put it on the table. We go pray. He goes pray about it. I come go pray about it. We give God the opportunity to get involved, to either shed some light here, bring a resolution so we can move forward. That's one of the things that we do in order to repair.
Well, that's a very good one to repair, so that, because you don't want the relationship to just stop progressing. We still got to pay bills. We still got to tend to the children. We still got activities. So we got to find a way, where we can be hard on the problem and not on each other.
Right.
That the problem don't consume the relationship. So moving it to the side, sometimes just moving things to the side and revisiting it is a great aid, because then you got a different perspective. You had time to calm down, cool down, and to be clear about the discussion. So tabling it is a very good point that you made.
And then even
like
bring,
that.
go ahead, Sue.
No, you go ahead.
And even bringing it back when you said the time to even bring it back.
Yeah.
And the issue, waiting on that time.
Yeah.
Because that's critical. I'm in there, like you said, I may not be in such a good mood. That's not the time to talk about.
Yeah.
you may add fuel to the fire. You don't want to do that. So it's important.
So the timing and
is very
presentation.
critical.
And then not cross-pollinating issues.
Okay.
Yeah, instead, you got one issue on the table that you haven't resolved, and now you're bringing another issue into the matter. And what happens in the discussion, something that we discussed last week, now comes back up again, cross-pollinating. You have to deal with each issue separately.
Let's talk about that.
Let them accumulate.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because that is something I think that many of us know. So how do we do that? Right? How do we do that? Because I know as a woman, right? Like we have lists. We have lists. So how do we leave that, right? How do we leave that list and say, you know what, like, we're just going to talk about this, but this one's creeping in.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the list. Ain't nothing wrong with the list. Keep the list, but you can only fight one fight at a time.
That's it.
I mean, if you use the boxing analogy or metaphor, you can only fight one person at a time. So let's fight this problem first. Let's resolve this, and then we can move down the list. Because what happened if you don't solve this, it's still on the list and you're moving down the list, but you haven't resolved anything. And then that just creates more tension, more frustration, more, anger in the relationship. Disharmony. Yeah, disharmony. Thank you.
That's the truth.
So you can only fight one fight at a time.
And I believe it takes a level of maturity and a level of emotional maturity and restraint, and be able to commit to it. I'm not going to bring this up. As tempting as it is for women, because like you said, we multitask in our mind, we trying to win the fight a lot of times. And so we're going to bring in something to try to justify whatever we're saying or prove our point. But we have to really bring restraints on ourselves to be able to say, like we just said, I'm only going to deal with this issue right here, right now, at this time.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to do that. That does take something.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, you know what? I'm right there with you, Ethel. I am right there with you. It's an area of growth for me, and it sounds like I need more prayer in that area for myself. I really do. I really do. So can you help us by sharing 3 quick tips to build a strong bond in our marriages?
Oh, sure. For me, I wanted to build a strong bond. We believe that you continue to need to date. You have to date, continue to date. Don't let it get stale. I know life happens, children happen, all kind of stuff happen, but making your mate, your spouse, your first priority. And dating for us is huge. We still date 39 years later, we date, we find dinner, movies, whatever we like to do, hang out with family, whatever. We date still. We enjoy that.
We're still discovering.
Mhm.
You know, many times I introduce her to people, strangers. I said, this is my girlfriend for the last 39 years.
I love it.
Because, you know, in the dating mode, you
Mhm.
act differently.
Yes.
You know, you're still trying to impress.
Get the giddies.
You're still chasing.
Yes.
You're like, yeah, I got to win this reward. Put on my best.
I love that. Oh my goodness. If you did not write this down, write it down.
So,
This is my girlfriend. This is my boyfriend. Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
I love it.
And that keeps you in the mindset, you know, of still discovering one another, still exploring one another, and where you're not taking the relationship for granted just because of life issues.
And then I would say another one would be friends. Continue to build the friendship, because I asked God for a friend. I wanted someone that would know, understand my dreams, my aspirations, what made Ethel tick, and that studying part came into place. And so we're each other's best friends. We like you said, we're a team. We fight for the oneness, and we believe that a lot of marriages, they're so divided because they're separate in their thinking. They're separate in the vision of the marriage and the relationship. They're not trying to come together as one, and we fight to come together as one, because that's what God said. The two shall become
one.
The two shall become
one. And how do you get there? So,
yes. Oh my goodness. What a journey.
It's a work in progress.
Wow.
It is, but it's rewarding when you have you have rules and guidelines. I think that many times people take this thing, marriage, just for, you know, that is by default you're gonna be happy, you're gonna be productive, and that's just not true.
That'd be nice.
right.
That would be nice. No, this is work. This is work, and so
What would be your last? I did too. What would be your last and how to build a strong bond between a marriage?
We said dating and friendship, and I would add, you know, just having the same values and vision, you know, for what you want in the relationship. Well, let me put it like this. I would say we are building something, something unique, something powerful, something that we want to pass on to our children and to their children. And so I'm making sure that we do it together. Making sure that we're working to build this thing together, our marriage, building it together, not one, you know, having all of the ideas and the architectural plan and that, oh, Ethel, you got to do this and you got to do that, you know, I mean, the traditional roles that have played in our society for women, you know, I mean, sometimes they've been excluded from the building. And I think it's important that, you know, that you build together, that you work together, that you set the ground rules for the family and for the vision and for the future together. And I think that brings that bond, because we are doing this together. We can't say, I can't say I did that. No, we did that.
Love it.
So
I love that.
Wow.
Love
Powerful. Powerful. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Just amazing. And I love that when you were talking about purpose, right? You know, and how you are together and not just separate, but you are one. And oh my goodness. And the communication is the glue, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Huge.
It is huge.
Oh my goodness.
It can be effective though if you just work at it, putting things in place, because there's gonna be disagreements. Life happens, but we can't let life happen to the point that it robs now from the relationship. So we got to have something in place to govern it, something that we can fall back on to deal with the issues that come forward.
Oh my goodness. I know our notepads are full. If you found this conversation beneficial, I know that I absolutely loved it. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and get those comments down in the feed. Ethel and Pastor Donald Rucker want to answer your questions. They are here. Where can we find you both?
www.christiandevelopmentcenter.org. We are also on Facebook, Christian Development Center, and we're on Instagram, Develop My Christian. And then we have a website, In Rooted Love. That's the letter N, rootedlove.com. So those places they can reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to help assist you to build a strong and lasting, loving relationship.
Exactly.
Absolutely a blessing. Any other wisdom you'd like to share with everyone before we close today?
I would, for those that are single, you know, that's looking to enter into the union of marriage, please don't do yourself a disservice by not asking questions. You need to ask a lot of questions in the dating mode, because it's the questions that's going to expose things, bring things to light. You know, and I think sometimes singles don't ask enough questions, that they get emotionally attached first. And I found that when you do that, sometimes judgment goes out the window. So ask a lot of questions.
With that being said, can you give us, wow, you know, I think we could talk a long time on this. What would be two powerful questions that you could leave everyone with today to get started? Are there two questions that maybe, or three, that come to mind that would really help those single people out there kind of really discover and get to know their potential partner?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, you know, I would, one of the questions I was asked, where are you going? I want to know the goals of that person. What's your vision for life? You know, where are you going? Because if the person don't have a goal or a vision, then this is what you're buying into. So, you know, they're just taking life by default.
That's good.
You know, what's your relationship like with your parents? Did you get along with your dad, your mom? Is there issues? Yeah. And then I think the third question, how do you feel about money?
That's a good one.
That's huge.
What's your thoughts about money?
Right.
That is a good one.
Now, those just came off the top of my head, but you know, I'm quite sure that there are more things you can explore. But you know, I would definitely, I know I told my daughter when she was young, is that, you know, ain't nothing wrong with the natural inclinations that you have for the opposite sex. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But I think that you have to protect yourself. You have to ask questions. You have to ask those tough questions. You know, where's this person going? Because if you're going to hook up and they don't know where they're going, so now you got two people that don't know where they're going.
Absolutely. And maybe they don't have a compass either, right?
Yes.
So those questions are important to ask, because this is what you're going to hook up. You just can't get fixated on the exterior. You got to ask those questions. How's your relationship with your parents? Because a lot of times people come with issues. That's baggage. Then you know, you hooking up now, that becomes your baggage.
Because you marry the family.
Exactly. Or you marry the person who's had trauma, or you experience some things that they did not like. Well, that's going to carry over into your relationship.
But let me ask you again, oh boy, we could probably go on for a while, but let me ask you, just so our audience doesn't leave going, oh, wait a second. So you mean that I have trauma, or I have some challenges with my family, then I'm not designed for a relationship? Can you clarify that for us? What would the answers to those questions kind of tell us?
It doesn't disqualify you from relationship. You just need to be aware that it does enter into the relationship.
And it will impact it.
And it will impact it, because if you've had trauma within the family, well, guess what? Chances are when you get into another relationship, that's going to trigger something. Something's going to go on in that relationship that's going to trigger that experience. You're going to draw back on that experience. Now you're going to be looking at that person through that experience. So I always said to singles, especially singles, you know, Do as much as you can to get whole.
Yes. Yes.
Love you first.
Yes.
Get to know you
You
first.
Mhm.
Who you are, what's your values,
Mhm.
what's your vision, how you see yourself.
Mhm.
Because this is just my opinion, and I could be wrong. I don't think any person can come fulfill you.
No, I agree.
So
That is just some kind of rhetoric that have been filled in our heads that we are to romanticize our relationships and our partners.
Right.
There are no Prince Charmings. There's no princesses.
Right.
We're
Right.
all
Right. They're not going
naked.
to save you off the white horse. He's not coming.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice.
Right.
But yeah, it'd be really nice. But you know what? I think this just means that we have more to talk about. And so we will absolutely bring Pastor Donald Rucker and his beautiful wife, Ethel, back for some more conversations. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
God bless.
God bless.